In 2005, one of the largest, most mysterious, and most cleverly planned robberies in history took place at a state bank in Fortaleza, Brazil. No alarm went off, no shots were fired, and no obvious traces were left outside. But over 160 million Brazilian reais in cash had silently vanished from the central bank vault. That amounted to 3.5 tons of money, making it the largest cash heist in Brazilian history and indeed in the world. When authorities investigated the incident, they encountered one of the most ingenious crime plans in history. The robbers had spent months digging an 80-meter tunnel leading to the bank vault. It was a real-life La Casa de Papel scenario. How did one of the world's largest robberies, which made it into the Guinness Book of World Records, go completely undetected? Everything had begun months before the robbery. The mastermind behind the plan was Jussi van Santos, nicknamed Alemo. The one who provided the money was Fernando Ribeiro, nicknamed Fernandinho. This individual was the financier and the dark face of the plan. Each member of the robbery gang, consisting of approximately 34 people, had a specific role. Construction workers, professional tunnel diggers, ex-convicts, those with engineering knowledge, and bank security guards who leaked inside information. Among them were experienced individuals who had previously escaped prison by digging tunnels. For example, Moises Silva had escaped from a Sao Paulo prison in 2001, along with 107 other inmates by digging a tunnel. Well, how could such a massive operation as digging an 80-meter tunnel right across from the bank remain secret and go unnoticed? The gang planned to achieve their goal by renting a house close to the bank that would not arouse suspicion, digging a secret tunnel to the vault of the Central Bank of Brazil. The bank was an attractive target due to its strong security and the large amounts of money stored in its underground vaults. After the discovery, the house was observed for a long time. A fake lawn company was set up so that the digging would not attract attention. The house was painted green and made to appear as if it were operating under the name Grama Sintética. The company's founder was a gang member using the alias Paulo Sergio, and the birthday on his fake ID matched the date of the robbery. Sergio established good relations with neighbors and dispelled suspicions with fake invoices and minibuses bearing the bank's logo. Thanks to this camouflage, the underground structure of the area was analyzed and the tunnel route was determined. During the excavation that began in May, a 7-person team worked in shifts in the tunnel, which extended approximately 4 meters below the house's foundation toward the bank. The soil was filled into sacks, pulled out with ropes, and stacked. The biggest logistical problem was transporting the enormous amount of soil silently and without arousing suspicion. Hundreds of trucks emptied the soil outside the city in the middle of the night under the pretext of fake gardening work. The exteriors of the minibuses were kept clean, and their interiors were covered with tarps. But this could have aroused suspicion every day. So eventually, they began storing the soil in sacks inside the house. This incredible logistics kept the operation invisible for months. The gang filled all the rooms and sealed them off with walls. Once all the rooms were full, they began dumping the soil into the garden. As a result, the garden's ground level rose by about 1 meter. This process lasted for months, but neither the neighbors nor the authorities suspected anything. Why? Because they thought it was just an ordinary lawn care business. And no one could have imagined that this ordinary business was meticulously constructing a criminal project in Brazilian history. Gang members, to avoid suspicion, they gave away advertising posters and free lawn mats and promotional products to neighbors. But in reality, they were digging a tunnel from the basement to the bank vault. They camouflaged the noise as ordinary construction sounds. However, during the excavation, they encountered a sewer line. So they skillfully changed the direction of the tunnel and continued digging. When the tunnel was almost complete, it was approximately 80 meters long and 70 centimeters wide. It was 4 meters deep and ran under a large street. This narrow passage could have become a death trap. Oxygen could have run out, the ground could have collapsed, or there could have been an electric shock. That's why they built much more than just an ordinary crime tunnel. A ventilation system for oxygen, support from 900 wooden planks to prevent collapse. They installed special lines for light and water. This was more like building an underground shelter than a bank robbery. Now, there was only one question left. Would this flawless tunnel get them the $70 million? By the evening of Friday, the 5th of August, 2005, the day of the robbery, the tunnel had reached the exact location beneath the central bank's vault. This was made possible by information obtained from the bank's former security guards and calculations made by individuals within the gang who had engineering knowledge. The operation was timed for the weekend to minimize the risk of confrontation and attract attention. So how did the robbers know the exact location of the vault? The main source of this information was the bank's former security guards, Dusimar K. Rose and Edelson Vieira. Both had worked at the central bank and had legal access to sensitive areas. Information such as the location of the vaults, patrol times, and the operation of the alarm systems was passed on to the gang. Now, there was only one obstacle left: the bank's vault wall. The vault was a concrete wall reinforced with steel, approximately 1 meter thick. To reach the vault, they launched a 3-hour silent battle using special drills, hydraulic jacks, and welding machines. After 3 hours of work, the wall was breached and they entered. The forklift to be used inside had been deliberately left in front of the camera's field of view during the day. This reduced the risk of being caught on camera when exiting through the hole. The safe they chose was not random. Inside were old 50 real banknotes that had been withdrawn from circulation but not yet destroyed, uninsured, and untraceable. Since these old 50 real banknotes were not serialized by the bank, it was nearly impossible to track them once they entered circulation. They quickly seized the money, stuffed it into sacks, and removed it. The operation began at 10 p.m. on Friday and ended at 6 a.m. on Saturday. The amount stolen was a staggering 164 million Brazilian reais, equivalent to approximately $70 million, and weighed a total of 3.5 tons. When stacked on top of each other, they would have reached a height of 330 meters. This was the largest cash robbery in Brazilian history in the world at that time. So why didn't the alarms go off? The bank was, of course, equipped with alarm systems, but these systems generally focused on exterior walls, door and window entrances, and interior motion sensors. The robbers had studied the bank's security system for a long time and identified its weak points. This attack from below the meter remained undetected by the existing sensors and alarms, triggering no alarms. The gang, working with cold precision, exploited this vulnerability with skill. After 11 hours of intense work, the most difficult stage began, extracting 3.5 tons of money from the narrow tunnel. But it was impossible to drag such a massive load. So, with military discipline, they set up a special rail system. This final, exhausting transport took hours. The narrowness of the tunnel made this process difficult and time-consuming. At the end of 3 months, every member who reached the money knew their share. The leaders and financiers would receive 10-20 million reais, while the workers who did the digging would receive approximately 2 million reais. The money was loaded onto pre-arranged vehicles and company minibuses, but there was so much of it that it wouldn't fit into a single vehicle. The teams divided the money among different vehicles and dispersed along designated routes, and then they vanished. When the bank employees arrived at work in the morning, everything seemed normal at first glance. The doors were secure, the cameras were on, and the security alarm was silent until someone went to the vault. The employees who went down to the vault couldn't believe their eyes. The doors were locked, but the vault was empty, with only scattered banknotes and messy stacks of cash on the floor. The fact that the money had been left behind like that showed that the robbers had fled in a hurry without thinking. A huge hole had been cut into the floor of the vault. No one knew it yet, but one of the most professional robberies in Brazilian history had begun. The police were called immediately. The investigation began. Police officer Enias Pereira crawled through the narrow tunnel for hours. The exit point he reached resembled a mine shaft. Digging tools, piles of gravel, tin cans, clothes, and sandbags stacked up to the ceiling. Everything was covered in white powder, sprinkled to destroy fingerprints. The gang was incredibly organized. But how did so many people and so much money disappear without a trace? The solution lay in a perfect escape plan. Some took intercity roads, others fled abroad. But a new and bigger problem emerged. Most of the fortune consisted of $50 bills. This was fine for small purchases, but spending millions was nearly impossible. The money had to be laundered. Some gang members tried to solve this problem with luxury hotels, cars, and fake IDs, but they didn't realize that this ostentation would give them away. Some managed to disappear without being noticed. Others were caught due to carelessness. Some went to prison, while others are still being tracked down for the money. But the money is still missing. The incident caused a nationwide shockwave despite not being reported to the public. It wasn't just the amount of money stolen that made headlines worldwide, but also the engineering genius, meticulous planning, and camouflage skills involved in the crime. Brazilian police launched one of the largest manhunts in history. The FBI joined the investigation due to the risk of the robbery reaching international proportions. But tracking the money was not easy. As it was dragged through the tunnel, it became contaminated and nearly impossible to trace. Authorities were unsure which clues would prove useful as they attempted to track the fate of millions of reais. In November 2005, the police were finally on the verge of solving a major problem. The serial number of a disposable phone card used by the robbers was traced, and they discovered which phone the card had been used in. This phone gave the police access access to hundreds of hours of secret conversation recordings. Thanks to these recordings, they learned how the gang dispersed after the robbery and how they spent the money. In light of this information, part of the problem was solved, and 13 robbers were arrested. However, this incident revealed a new and more frightening problem. After the robbery, which initially seemed flawless, the gang members began fighting each other to control this enormous fortune. The police, who were tracking the money to find a solution, were confronted with a shocking reality. This internal war within the gang had turned into blackmail, kidnapping, and murder. The stolen money began to be referred to as cursed. Gang leader Fernandinho was kidnapped shortly thereafter by his own members. Despite his family paying the ransom, he was tragically murdered. His body was found on the side of a highway near Fortaleza. This incident highlighted both the lack of trust within the gang and how money can drive people to cruelty. The investigation continued with the participation of hundreds of agents. Most of the criminals who were caught trying to launder the stolen money through luxury cars, real estate, drug, and arms trafficking. But gang leader Alemão remained at large for years, and the police were still after him. An operation was carried out. Alemão was caught in 2008 while attempting to launder the money. He received a 49-year, 2-month prison sentence for organizing a criminal organization, forgery, and money laundering. In 2017, he was shot while attempting to escape from Fortaleza prison and spent 3 days in the hospital. The investigations lasted for years and resulted in the arrest of 129 people and a total of over 2,452 years of prison sentences. However, this success immediately gave rise to a new problem. Almost all of the stolen money was missing. Despite all their efforts, the police were only able to recover 18 million reais, or just 11% of the total amount. So where had the remaining millions of reais gone? A deeper investigation revealed the answer. Unexpected information changed the course of the investigation. It was discovered that some police officers had collaborated with the gang and accepted bribes. This showed that criminal organizations could infiltrate the state. This information revealed that the problem was not just a bank robbery, but also a crisis of security and trust. This shocking revelation raised a new question worldwide. Banks began implementing advanced sensors, tunnel detection systems, thermal cameras, and continuous surveillance measures against underground threats. The incident entered the Guinness World Records and became a modern legend. Numerous tunnels were discovered in Brazil and Paraguay in the following years. The Brazilian central bank heist is still considered unique in terms of strategy, engineering, and camouflage expertise. This operation, carried out without any violence, without triggering alarm, and without any witnesses, is a lesson in tunnel engineering, discipline, and strategic planning. The fate of the 164 million reais, or 3.5 tons of cash, remains a mystery to many Brazilians to this day. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments. See you in the new videos.